The federal government has a lot of power here. The president has a lot of power here. And he issued an executive order saying, you know what? We're going to make sure that those students in federally funded programs that are in athletics, that they are their actual born sex, that are competing. In other words, if you're somebody who was born a boy, but you want to compete against the girls in the track race, not happening. And if your school allows it to happen, then guess what? They're not going to get the federal funding. And this is important. Very, very important. And yet you've got states out there like, well, the state of Maine that say, we're not going along with this. I want you to see this because this is unbelievable, okay? So Donald Trump has all these governors into the White House today, and he's proud of this accomplishment. He said the NCAA is on board, everybody's on board. And then he's like, hey, Maine, are you on board? Watch what happens next.
The NCAA has complied immediately, by the way, that's good. But I understand Maine, is Maine here, the governor of Maine? Well, are you not going to comply with it?
I'm complying with the state and federal laws.
We are the federal law. Well, you better do it. You better do it because you're not going to get any federal funding at all if you don't. And by the way, your population, even though it's somewhat liberal, although I did very well there, your population doesn't want men playing in women's sports. So you better comply because otherwise you're not getting any federal funding.
See you in court.
Every state, good, I'll see you in court. I look forward to that. That should be a real easy one. And enjoy your life after governor because I don't think you'll be in elected politics.
He's right. I mean, honestly, if the Democrats were smart, they would not have embraced this issue head on. I mean, it's really and truly not popular. It's like popular with 0.01% of the population, I guess. Nobody else really likes it. Nobody else finds it fair. Nobody else approves. And you know what? He's right on Maine. I grew up in New Hampshire. Some of you guys, we talked about this because I spent summers in Maine. I was a lucky kid growing up, and I spent my summers in Maine, and so I'm familiar with Maine as well. And listen, Maine is very rural. It's not highly populated. And yes, maybe it has some tendency to go blue, but I'll tell you, it can go red just as easily. And you got an issue like this, and Maine is going to go red. This governor will be out of a job because Donald Trump is going to cut off the federal funding. So she's like, I'll see you in court. We have our own rules. Well, you know what? He gets to make this one. I'm sorry. And this is important. I wanted to, I've told you guys before, but I'm really proud that I have partnered with the Herzog Foundation because I'm so sick of this stuff. In schools, it's disgusting, right? Some of the stuff that has come out about what they were trying to preach is just unbelievable. It's sort of just sick, should I say. Yeah, I will say that. It's sort of sick. And so what I'm just thrilled with is this opportunity to be with Herzog. And Herzog, I just think they're an amazing organization because they're encouraging people to look at other alternatives for school, K through 12. In other words, you can get a Christian education, K through 12. They are there to help you. It's a nonprofit. It's a foundation that was set up to make sure that people had alternatives to the public school system if you don't like what they're selling you. And so while we hope it gets better, and it should get better, Herzog offers a whole sort of ability for you to look at alternatives for your own kids, for your grandkids, for your friends' kids, all that stuff. And so that's pretty cool, right? Like that is pretty darn cool. I was trying to play a soundbite here. I've got it for you of J.D. Vance saying something that I found to be incredibly powerful at CPAC this week. It was just so powerful because, it's like they've just tried to, all over men. And I look at this, as a woman, as someone who has a son, as someone who has a husband, and I find this so offensive. And I don't understand why more women aren't speaking up for their husbands and their sons and their brothers. But here's JD doing the job and doing it well.
My message to young men is don't allow this broken culture to send you a message that you're a bad person because you're a man, because you like to tell a joke, because you like to have a beer with your friends, or because you're competitive. It's... Our message, the cultural message, and I think the president's and mine is the exact opposite, but our cultural message is, I think that it wants to turn everybody whether male or female, into androgynous idiots who think the same, talk the same, and act the same. We actually think God made male and female for a purpose, and we want you guys to thrive as young men and as young women, and we're going to help with our public policy to make it possible to do that.
How is that? How is that so revolutionary? Like, how does that make you far right wing? Except that you have a system that was designed probably going all the way back to the 20s. I mean, if you think about it, and if you see the movie Oppenheimer, you may understand what I'm getting at, but there's been an embedded jealousy against the United States and the success of the United States going all the way back to the 20s and the 30s. And I think there was a movement globally to try and take us down. And so you think back to sort of the McCarthy era, right? And we've been living in the opposite of that. Now, McCarthy didn't have the right methodology. He didn't do this the right way. The messaging was all wrong. But the point was he was onto something, and that he knew people were trying to take down the United States. And they were trying to take down a meritocracy. They were trying to take down capitalism. This Marxism, this communism was really and truly a threat. He understood that. Again, badly executed, all right? Don't misinterpret what I'm saying. Badly executed, but he understood it. And anyway, this thing's been festering along in Hollywood, for example, in pop culture. And then you had it start to pick up some steam. I suspect with the Clintons, carried forth, put on steroids by Obama, and then the money just kept flowing in because the idea was, well, we're going to stop Trump. We got to stop Trump. So all this money went into these NGOs to do all these ridiculous things, including influencing public education here in the States and all over the world. And here we're living in a society today where they want to destroy the United States of America and everything that makes it great. And we have to pick up the pieces and start again. This is not a constitutional crisis. The senator from Maine out today, I guess, trying to defend his governor because she thinks it's somehow a constitutional crisis that Donald Trump, elected by the American people, is saying, I've got an executive order saying, guess what? You know what? The boys cannot race against the girls in sports. Can't happen. I remember when Biden put an executive order in saying if you were age 12 or up, your parents couldn't have access to certain health information. In all seriousness, and by the way, I had to deal with this. I'm like, well, my 12-year-old doesn't have her own email account. Seriously, dealing with a New York hospital. It is nuts, okay? So he did that executive order, but Donald Trump can't do that. I don't think so. Here's the senator from Maine trying to bring it home, defending his governor.
What's it going to take for us to wake up? And when I say us, I mean this entire body, to wake up to what's going on here. Is it going to be too late? Is it going to be when the president has accreted all this power and the Congress is an afterthought? What's it going to take? I mean, the offenses keep piling up. And as I said, leaving it to the courts, number one, is a cop-out. And number two,
I'm sorry, like, what planet is he living on? It's a cop-out to leave it to the courts? Oh, because you don't like what the courts say or said. I get it. You know, there was that Judge Shunke who ruled this week, a federal judge put in place by the Democrats, by the way, who said, yeah, you know what, it's totally fine that Elon Musk is going through and doing this audit. It's totally fine that he's getting access to this information. That they don't like what the courts are saying. And so they're the ones trying to take this into their own hands. It's actually pretty explicit, I would say. You know, and Stephen Miller, who's the president's public policy advisor, I mean, he was fantastic. He got up there today and he gave the media what I would call a civics lesson. Actually, he called it a civics lesson. He's trying to explain to them, you know, this is the way it works, and the president has a certain amount of power, and you guys are just going to have to get over it. But this is epic. He totally destroyed them. I got to show you.
It is true that many of the people in this room for 4 years failed to cover the fact that Joe Biden was mentally incompetent and was not running the country. It is also true that many people in this room who have used this talking point that Elon is not elected fail to understand how government works. So I'm glad for the opportunity for a brief civics lesson. A president is elected by the whole American people. He's the only official in the entire government that is elected by the entire nation, right? Judges are appointed, members of Congress are elected at the district or state level, which is one man. And the Constitution, Article 2, has a clause known as the vesting clause, and it says the executive power shall be vested in a president, singular. The whole will of democracy is imbued into the elected president. That president then appoints staff to then impose that democratic will onto the government. The threat to democracy, indeed the existential threat to democracy, is the unelected bureaucracy of lifetime tenured civil servants who believe they answer to no one, who believe they can do whatever they want without consequence, who believe they can set their own agenda no matter what Americans vote for. So Americans vote for radical FBI reform, and FBI agents say they don't want to change. Or Americans vote for radical reform on our energy policies, but EPA bureaucrats say they don't want to change. Or Americans vote to end DEI, racist DEI policies, and lawyers of the Department of Justice say they don't want to change. What President Trump is doing is he is removing federal bureaucrats who are defying democracy by failing to implement his lawful orders, which are the will of the whole American people.
Thank you, Stephen Miller. He's super bright, by the way. I always enjoy talking to him. He's been on my show many times over the years, and I'm always he's like one of those people you're like, wow, really, really, really bright guy. And what he's articulating there is that, yes, the president, and, look, we don't love EOs, don't get me wrong. I mean, if this were Biden issuing all these EOs, I'd be like, but the truth is that the president does have a certain amount of power and a certain leeway here. And included in that power is the ability to say to these states, by the way, you want Congress? He's got Congress, okay? He's got Congress. He's got Congress. He's got the Senate. He's got everybody, okay? He got the popular vote, and he won the Electoral College. So, you don't like the courts because the courts aren't giving you the right answers either. Senator Angus from Maine, Angus King, listen, he's got everything. I mean, those NGOs must have paid you all so well that you were so convinced that you had to do their bidding. But the American people didn't like what you were doing, and this is the pushback. Sometimes the pendulum swings. This is the swing right back into the center so that American people, American families have a shot at success. Donald Trump also telling these governors, hey, guess what? You better cooperate with ICE or else.
The American people expect every city and state to fully honor ICE detainer requests, and we hope they can, and to ensure the safe transfer of criminal aliens into federal custody for immediate removal from our country. Many of the countries said, we're not ever going to let them back. Under the Biden administration, I remember it's Venezuela. He's a tough guy. And others, they said, we're not letting them back. They're out of here, and you'll never bring them back. They're not coming into this country. And Biden said, oh, we can't bring them back. They won't take them. Well, we took them. And every single country now, you saw it with Colombia, you saw it with Venezuela. In fact, they actually offered to send planes to pick them up, and they'll pick them up so that we don't have to go through the expense of sending a plane. Is that correct, Marco? Even Marco couldn't believe that one. But they literally are sending planes to pick up these people. And they're rough people, and they're picking them up, and they're putting them in the planes.
Yeah, because they know what the alternative is. Tariffs, thank you very much. Isn't that what happened in Mexico and Colombia? Colombia is a great example, right? They said, oh, we're not taking these people back. And Donald Trump said, okay, fine, 25% tariffs for you. Literally within 3 hours. That was like the best. I had sent the story to a friend, and he wrote me back. He's like, yeah, give it a few hours. Literally within 3 hours, suddenly Colombia was like, oh yeah, we'll take them. And by the way, not only will we take them, we will send a plane to pick them up. So, you got to have a strong leader and a leader who actually puts everybody else on notice, and that's what's happening. Donald Trump is able to do that. Biden couldn't even come close. Not even close. And I don't know as Obama ever had the desire. Sure, we should point out that he did actually send a lot of people home, but I think things changed between Obama and Trump. Don't forget, Trump campaigned in 2016 on saying he wanted to get the bad guys out, the criminals out of this country. And so the left turned and they looked at that and said, okay, well, we'll take the opposite point of view. Why don't we bring them all in? Oh, hey, maybe we can even get them to vote. In New York City, they were talking about making 800,000 illegals eligible to vote. You got illegals eligible to vote out in Berkeley, California. So you see where this was going. There was a method to the madness, if you would, all while hurting everyday Americans who have been struggling with inflation themselves. And now all of a sudden, our taxpayer dollars are going to support hotels with daily maid service? Are you kidding me? $350 a week for whatever food you want because you're going to need some ethnically appropriate food as a refugee? Are you kidding me? By the way, they weren't refugees. They were here illegally, which in this White House's estimation makes them criminals. So it's a whole new game.